Hello, and thank you for watching this episode of the Sports Detective Show on YouTube. My name is James Williams. If you're unfamiliar with this page, and this is your first time watching us, I've been doing this podcast now for over 3 years. Been talking and doing interviews with people all over the country, talking college football, NFL, college basketball, and NBA. And we are just now starting to put clips like this on YouTube, a lot more kind of like solo reaction type of things to stories that I find interesting. And this is one of those stories. So if you like content like this, if you like this video, we'll have a little message at the end that says subscribe to, but feel free to hit that subscribe button. We'll help the podcast grow and we'll help get this work out to more people. So without any further ado, let's get into our topic here today. And this was kind of the story of the NFL Christmas sports weekend, and it's what happened on Monday Night Football. The Baltimore Ravens traveled to San Francisco in what we believed may be a Super Bowl preview, and the Ravens just flat out stomped the 49ers. The 49ers, for once, when they were all healthy for the first time this season, looked vulnerable. Their offense struggled to put together good, consistent drives. Brock Purdy had his worst game as an NFL player. He threw 4 interceptions. Sam Darnold came in threw one interception, which caused the Baltimore Ravens to count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interceptions on the night. This was just pure and utter domination from the Baltimore Ravens on both sides of the line of scrimmage. The secondary, Kyle Hamilton on Baltimore, the former Notre Dame player, was making plays all over the place. The 49ers moved the ball pretty well, but again, just couldn't really get together any drives. And I kind of just want to talk about some of the bigger picture stuff with this, because if you've been following my page, I haven't had much views on this video, but I did this breakdown after last week's game, or after last week in the NFL season, where I was just very much shocked when I looked at the NFL MVP odds, and Brock Purdy was a minus 200 favorite. Now, after this game, so basically what those odds meant was like, hey, the 49ers are going to win this big game against the Ravens. That's what the odds were saying. And they're going to win their next 2 games. They're going to have the number 1 seed. They're going to have the best record in the NFL. And because of those 2 things being combining factors together, they're going to give the MVP to the quarterback. So since then, as obviously as we just discussed, Baltimore dominated San Francisco. Lamar looked like the best player on the field, and the odds have changed as a result to last night. So let's go ahead and check these odds here. I just tweeted this out just so I can basically have if it will load. There we go. Now it finally loads. I tweeted this out just to kind of, go back and kind of clarify the odds here of what we were seeing here. So Lamar Jackson, I think last week was like plus 450, 400. He was kind of in that range for the NFL MVP odds. Now he's minus 175. McCaffrey, weirdly enough, his odds have just like skyrocketed to plus 470. I don't think Christian McCaffrey is going to win MVP, because I just don't think for running back to win MVP in today's day and age, I think you need to have just like a record breaking type of season. And I just don't think McCaffrey over these next 2 weeks is really going to have that unless he has like 2 300-yard games. And then you look at the odds here: Tua plus 900, Josh Allen plus 1300, Brock Purdy plus 1300, and Tyreek Hill plus 2200. I think basically based off of all of the games this past weekend, I think it's safe to say that 5 of these top 6 here with the odds are probably your favorites to win MVP. Because if Josh Allen just keeps willing the Bills to win games, he has a shot. If Tyreek Hill goes berserk in over these next 2 weeks, he can win it. If the Ravens win out, they get the number 1 seed. Lamar's got it locked up there. I can't believe it's kind of like the Brock Purdy thing. I can't believe they give the award to Tua over Tyreek Hill. I'd be kind of shocked if that happened. So with that being said, if you're looking at the current MVP odds here, like Lamar is the odds-on favorite. And this is very much not shocking to me, because I know Lamar Jackson's great. He's been a very terrific player all season. But I kind of brought this up when I was talking about this last week. Lamar was getting hurt a little bit with his MVP discussion this entire season, because I think was it 2019 that he won the MVP? That season was just like so dominant and the Ravens were so good that a lot of times when this MVP stuff comes down to it, it's like, oh, okay, well, this wasn't your best season, so should we really give you the award? Like that hurts a lot of people, not just the NFL, but in the NBA too, and other sports too, where it's like, you were really good this season, but it wasn't your best, and you won MVP when you're at your best. So it's just kind of a dumb sports topic that we're talking about. Um, so with Lamar here, getting into the grand discussion of this, if Lamar wins an MVP this year, Lamar all of a sudden is elevating himself historically into another stratosphere because over the history of the NFL, we have only had 10 players win multiple MVPs. Over the history of the NFL, it's dating back to the 50s. So if you go through all the guys that won multiple MVPs, I wrote all this stuff down before I started recording. You have Jim Brown, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes. One of those is running back Jim Brown, obviously. So Lamar would be the 10th quarterback in NFL history to win multiple MVPs. And I think that is something with Lamar here that we really need to talk about is when we do these lists of who's the best quarterback in the NFL, Mahomes is always number one. We understand that. We get that. Rodgers, when he was healthy, when he was winning those back-to-back MVPs a few years ago, he was number one or number two, depending on your list. You get that. He won a Super Bowl. The resume is astounding. His touchdown to interception ratio is always mesmerizing to a lot of people. But I think we're kind of underrating Lamar here because if he wins the second MVP, again, he's in that elite discussion. And I think when we're putting together our lists of best quarterbacks every single year, we always kind of put Lamar in that tier 2 category. We always kind of put it like most people make their list, they have Josh Allen ahead of him. There were years probably after Matt Stafford won the Super Bowl, they had Matt Stafford over him. A lot of people had Jalen Hurts over him. And I think it's kind of time to start admitting that Lamar is like a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the league. Because if you just kind of look at Lamar's stats this year, even though I said, hey, they're not as impressive as they were the previous years, it feels like every year, and especially this year, like every time the Ravens have a running back, they just have like a season-ending injury very, very short into the season or short in their time with the Ravens. We had Mitchell get hurt last week, who was looking really good for them. And if you look at it right now, Lamar is the number one leading rusher on the Ravens. And he's still putting together a decent passing season. You'd maybe, for NFL MVP, you'd maybe like those numbers a little bit up from where they are. But right now, it looks like it's going to happen. And the biggest thing that is the MVP is more than likely going to get decided next weekend because we have the Ravens playing the Dolphins. And a lot of things can happen at that game. If the Ravens keep on cruising, if they end up beating the Dolphins, it's Lamar's. Lamar's going to win the MVP. He's going to get his second MVP. But then if you get into the Dolphins and they win, now it depends how they win. Does Tua throw like 5 touchdowns? If he throws 5 touchdowns, that Tua MVP train is really going to start rowing. If Tyreek Hill has like 12 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns, that Tyreek Hill MVP odds at that plus 22-1 right now. That would be very, very juicy if you think he could do something like that. And 2, even if the Dolphins win, does that also somehow in a way open up the 49ers guys? If Christian McCaffrey goes off in the last 2 weeks and the 49ers get the number 1 seed in the NFC again, all of a sudden that becomes spicy. So the MVP race here is going to be kind of interesting. It looks like it's Lamar's to lose right now at this point. Again, if he wins that second MVP, Lamar Jackson is entering some very, very historic elite territory, and I'm happy for him because he got the money this year, and after a quarterback gets the money, it's like, all right, is the team going to be able to sustain around him? A lot of times we kind of see a little bit of a regression when quarterbacks get off their rookie contracts, and Lamar's been great this year. And the last 2 years, too, the Ravens have been kind of, he's missed some time here and there. There was a thing last year where it's like, was he really holding out because of a contract thing and maybe was being accused by some people of having a fake injury? So to go from where we were 12 months ago or even 9 months ago with Lamar and this whole saga with him to where now he could be winning his second MVP. It's really amazing, and Lamar is doing it in more of an unconventional way that we really haven't seen other quarterbacks doing it, where he is doing it as a dual threat. We have had quarterbacks that are dual threats win MVP. Cam Newton, obviously, um, and a lot of other quarterbacks, could use their legs too historically that have won MVPs, but not in the way that Lamar's doing it. So shout out to Lamar Jackson, MVP favorite. Getting into the big picture of what this means for the Super Bowl here, I don't know if I am betting a team to win the Super Bowl in the AFC. After this performance, there's no way you can pick anyone over the Ravens because their defense just dominated the line of scrimmage. Like Purdy in that game. Now Purdy too. I feel bad for Purdy a little bit because the 4 interceptions looks really bad. 2 of them were caused off of deflections. He really only had like truly one bad interception, and that was in the beginning of the game on that first drive when he threw it in the end zone and Kyle Hamilton picked it off. And that was kind of like basically a huge momentum swinger in the game. And so I didn't think Purdy was too bad, but the Ravens defense made him look bad. And again, that offense too, if Lamar is going to have they don't have that number 1 wide receiver where it's like, oh, okay, when things go down, it's like, throw it up to Jefferson, or hey, screw it, Tyreek Hill's out there somewhere, or they have a DeAndre Hopkins. They don't, or Devontae Adams. They don't necessarily have that number 1 guy. It was Mark Andrews, but Isaiah Likely has come in and done some good work for them. Rashad Bateman always seems to make a few plays. Zay Flowers seems to make some plays. Odell, comes in every once in a while and makes some good plays. They have a lot of weapons on this Baltimore offense. And, Monken, the OC, who was the guy that was the OC at Georgia for the past few years when they were winning national championships, it's going to be curious to see if he could potentially parlay this into either a college head coaching job, depending on how the Ravens do, obviously, in the postseason, or even another NFL head coaching job, because it seems that everywhere he goes, he's making things work. He's making things happen. So, again, even though the betting odds right now still have the 49ers number 1 favorite to win the Super Bowl, I really like the Ravens. The only question with the Ravens when it comes to winning the Super Bowl, though, is with some of their losses this year, it's kind of like they're very shocking losses that they shouldn't have lost. They lost to the Colts in overtime. That was really early on in the season. The Steelers game was very, very weird. So it just kind of seems like, and then they lost to the Browns, I believe, too. It just seems like the Ravens, we know that they're really good in the regular season when Lamar's cooking and healthy. But it's like when it gets to the postseason, what happens? What happens when your offense isn't cooking? Can you get stops defensively? And it looks like this year, more than maybe so the Lamar MVP year, this team just seems a lot more complete through every single position of the roster. The offensive line, receiver room, the ability to produce, quality, consistent offense against different types of defenses. And that defense just seems nasty. They should be considered one of the best defenses in the NFL. And if they win the Super Bowl, I think it's going to be very, very much not dependent, but it's going to be because of a defense, and they're going to be a very big reason. When it comes to the 49ers here, switching back to this conversation, the 49ers looked terrible yesterday. They got dominated on both line of scrimmage. Purdy got pressured a lot. Purdy threw 4 interceptions. But again, I think this is a case here where the Ravens had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because the 49ers are like 5.5 point favorites. Everyone was blowing smoke up the 49ers' butts, where Purdy MVP, Christian McCaffrey MVP. Look at the stats. This is one of the best teams. This is by far and away the best team in the NFL. So I think the Ravens had a little bit of a motivation behind them. But I think the 49ers are fine. They still have all the weapons. Purdy had one bad game. He's had a few bad games this year. But again, I beg you to find a quarterback that hasn't had a bad game this year. I want you to find a quarterback that hasn't had a bad game this year. Every single quarterback's had a bad game this year. Now, the 4 interceptions makes it look like horrific. But again, 2 of those interceptions were on deflections. Purdy had no time to really operate here. And I think they will be fine because every NFC team seems to be Very vulnerable. The Eagles keep winning. They're probably going to get 13 wins this year, maybe 12, but it still just doesn't seem as crisp on both sides of the ball. And it's clear that they have a lot of weaknesses. Hurts does not seem healthy. And if Hurts isn't healthy, unless things really break their way, they're probably not making the Super Bowl. The Lions, are we going to trust the Lions in the playoffs? They're a fun story. I'd love to see them get a playoff win. Hey, I'd love to see the Lions in the Super Bowl. But there is a thing with Jared Goff in cold weather. And if their Lions are going to go and win the Super Bowl, they're going to have to, or get to the Super Bowl, they're either going to have to go to like a Philadelphia in January. They're going to have to maybe go to a San Francisco in January. So there's a lot of question marks there. And then the Cowboys, they're the most sus team. They lost the Fraud Bowl this weekend. That means they are frauds, losing to Miami. So do we really trust them? Unless you're saying some sort of miracle wild card here. I'll end this here. I want to talk about Kyle Shanahan because I think when we're talking about the 49ers and we're talking about stuff like this, when things like this break down, and the conversation has really, at least this past year and a half with the Niners, been focused on Purdy, where it's like, oh, well, when Purdy doesn't have Deebo Samuel or George Kittle is out or Trent Williams is out, Purdy looks human again. And Purdy very much, isn't the guy, and is he really that good? I think we need to start pointing the finger at Kyle Shanahan a little bit more here because we consider Kyle Shanahan this offensive genius, which he is. Kyle Shanahan is very much one of the better coaches in the NFL. His scheme and how he can utilize these weapons when they are all healthy did make the 49ers look unstoppable, does make the 49ers look unstoppable at times, and is the reason that they are the Super Bowl favorites. But I was just kind of watching that game, and when Trent Williams went out and they're working with backup linemen in certain spots, the Ravens were just attacking those guys. And that was part of the reason that Brock Purdy and Darnold, when he came in, struggled, was because they weren't either sending double teams on some of these blockers. Like Clowney was having a field day out there, it seems like he was in the backfield like whenever he wanted to. And there gets to be a point here where it's like Kyle Shanahan needs to get some blame here too, because when some of these guys are out, it seems like Kyle Shanahan, when some of their key players are out, Kyle Shanahan doesn't seem to have like a second move. He doesn't seem to have a way where he can, all right, well, you know what? Some of the receivers out, we're just going to kind of change our team to be more of this physical run team. We're going to be more ball control, kind of control the game that way, use Kittle, utilize the run game there. It just seems like when times get tough for Kyle Shanahan in this offense, it seems like he doesn't have a second move. We saw that in the Super Bowl when they lost 28-3 when he was the OC for the Falcons. When things weren't working, he didn't adjust, and that's how Tom Brady had the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. And if the 49ers want to win a Super Bowl, I don't know if they can just rely, at least this season, on just basically just bulldozing their way there, and when they get to the Super Bowl, bulldozing again to win. Because these NFL teams do have talent in a lot of places. It's nearly impossible to get there all the way where you're completely healthy the entire time. And again, if you play the Ravens again in the Super Bowl and you kind of like, they got like, that's the other thing too. The 49ers, they got beat up front. Purdy wasn't good, but they just got flat out coached. The Ravens just outcoached them in every single way. And Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers coaching staff didn't necessarily seem to have an answer to that stuff. I'm not necessarily an X's and O's guy, but it just didn't seem like the 49ers necessarily had they got punched in the mouth and they didn't punch back, even schematically in that aspect of it. So there you have it. That was kind of my reaction to the MVP odds, the Ravens being Super Bowl contenders, because dang, they look really good, man. I might be putting a little bit of a future on them here shortly. And the 49ers, I don't think they're in trouble, but I think a big picture thing here with Kyle Shanahan, I'm going to be looking the next time something like this happens. What does Kyle Shanahan do? What does his coaching staff do to kind of make adjustments in the moment when their stuff isn't working? Again, guys, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button if you like this video. I'll keep coming out with content like this. I'm going to try and do basically a few videos a day, if not one video every single day, talking about current sports stories that are going on in the sports landscape. So thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.